ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. This is the second video about vasanas. Maharshi Ramana used to emphasize on the eradication of these vasanas because they are the stumbling blocks in the process of self-realization. So I start this video with talk number 80. Maharshi, the thoughts are only vasanas, predispositions accumulated in innumerable births before. Their annihilation is the aim. The state free from vasanas is the primal state and eternal state of purity. The devotee puts the question, it is not clear yet. Maharshi, everyone is aware of the eternal self. He sees so many dying but still believes himself eternal because it is the truth. Unwillingly, the natural truth asserts itself. The man is deluded by the intermingling of the conscious self with the insentient body. This delusion must end. Devotee, how will it end? Maharshi replies, that which is born must end. The delusion is only concomitant with the ego. It rises up and sinks, but the reality never rises nor sinks. It remains eternal. The master who has realized says so. The disciple hears, thinks over the words and realizes the self. There are two ways of putting it. The ever-present self needs no efforts to be realized. A realization is already there. Illusion alone is to be removed. Some say the word from the mouth of the master removes it instantaneously. Others say that meditation, etc., are necessary for realization. Both are right, only the standpoints differ. Devotee, is dhyana, meditation necessary? Maharshi replies, the Upanishads say that even the earth is in eternal dhyana. Devotee, how does karma, action, work, deeds help it? Will it not add to the already heavy load to be removed? Maharshi, karma done unselfishly purifies the mind and helps to fix it in meditation. Devotee, what if one meditates incessantly without karma? Maharshi, try and see. The vasanas will not let you do it. Dhyana comes only step by step. With the gradual weakening of the vasanas by the grace of the Master. Talk 108. Devotee. The individuals after going to deep sleep wake up individuals as formerly. How is it? Maharshi. Just as the rivers discharged into the ocean lose their individuality, still the waters evaporate and return as rain on the hills and through rivers to the ocean, so also the individuals going to sleep lose their individualities and yet return as individuals according to their previous vasanas unawares. Thus, even in death, such existence is not lost. Talk 141. Maharshi. Jnana, once revealed, takes time to steady itself. The self is certainly within the direct experience of everyone, but not as one imagines it to be. It is only as it is. This experience is samadhi, just as fire remains without scorching against incantations or other devices, but scorches otherwise. So also the self remains veiled by vasanas and reveals itself when there are no vasanas. Owing to the fluctuation of the vasanas, jnana takes time to steady itself. Unsteady jnana is not enough to check rebirth. Jnana cannot remain unshaken side by side with vasanas. True that in the proximity of a great master, the vasanas will cease to be active. The mind becomes still and samadhi results. Similar to fire not scorching because of other devices. Thus, the disciple gains true knowledge and right experience in the presence of the master. To remain unshaken in it, further efforts are necessary. He will know it to be his real being and thus be liberated even while alive. Samadhi with closed eyes is certainly good, but one must go further until it is realized that actionlessness and action are not hostile to each other. Fear of loss of samadhi while one is active is the sign of ignorance. Samadhi must be the natural life of everyone. There is a state beyond our efforts or effortlessness. Until it is realized effort is necessary. After tasting such bliss, even once, one will repeatedly try to regain it. Having once experienced the bliss of peace, no one would like to be out of it or engage himself otherwise. It is as difficult for a jnani to engage in thoughts as it is for an ajnani to be free from thought. The common man says that he does not know himself, he thinks many thoughts and cannot remain without thinking. Any kind of activity does not affect a jnani, his mind remains ever in eternal peace. Talk 142. Mr. Prakasa Rao from Bijawada, does not illusion become inoperative even before identity with Brahma results? Brahmkaravirti, or does it persist even afterwards? Maharshi, illusion will not persist after vasanas are annihilated. In the interval between the knowledge of the identity and annihilation of vasanas, there will be illusion. Talk 172. Devotee. Will the knowledge gained by direct experience be lost afterwards? Maharshi. Kavalla Navnita, the cream of emancipation, says it may be lost. Experience gained without rooting out all five vasanas cannot. All the vasanas cannot remain steady. Efforts must be made to eradicate the vasanas, otherwise rebirth after death takes place. Some say direct experience results from hearing from one's master. Others say it is from reflection, yet others say from one pointedness and also from samadhi. Though they look different on the surface, ultimately they mean the same. Knowledge can remain unshaken only after all the vasanas are rooted out. Talk number 173. Devotee. Lord, how can the grip of the ego be slackened? Maharshi. By not adding new vasanas to it. Devotee. Any amount of japa has not slackened the grip. Mercy, how so? It will duly slacken and vanish. Talk 230. A visitor. Can one realize the truth by learning the scriptures and study of books? Mercy, no. So long as predispositions remain latent in the mind, realization cannot be achieved. Shastra learning is itself a vasana. Realization is only in samadhi. Talk 289. Devotee. Having heard this truth, why does not one remain content? Mercy. Because sanskaras have not been destroyed. Unless the sanskaras cease to exist, there will always be doubt and confusion. Sandeha, Viprita. All efforts are directed to destroying doubt and confusion. To do so, their roots must be cut. Their roots are the sanskaras. These are rendered ineffective by practice as prescribed by the Guru. The Guru leaves it to the seeker to do this much so that he might himself find out that there is no ignorance. This truth mentioned is in the stage of the hearing of the truth, sarvana, that is not drid, firm. For making it unshaken, one has to practice reflection, manana, and one-pointedness, nididhyasana. These two processes course the seeds of vasanas so that they are rendered ineffective. Some extraordinary persons get drida, jnana, unshaken knowledge even on hearing the truth of only once, because they are Tirthopashka, advanced seekers, whereas the Akartopaksha, raw seekers, take longer to gain Dridgyana, unshaken knowledge. People ask, how did ignorance, avidya, arise at all? We have to say to them, ignorance never arose, it has no real being. That which is only vidya, knowledge, devotee. Why then do I not realize it, Maharshi? Because of the sanskaras. However, find out who does not realize and what he does not realize. Then it will be clear that there is no avidya. Talk number 317. Devotee. It is still theoretical to me. How shall I get the trance, the natural state, Maharshi? Trance is only temporary in its effects. There is happiness so long as it lasts. After rising from it, the old vasanas return. Unless the vasanas are destroyed in Sahaja Samadhi, effortless Samadhi, there is no good of trance, devotee. But trance must precede Sahaja Samadhi. Maharshi, trance is the natural state, although there are activities and phenomena, yet they do not affect the trance. If they are realized to be not apart from the self is realized. Where is the use of trance unless it brings about enduring peace of mind? Know that even now you are in trance, whatever happens, that's all. Devotee, can there be self realization before the vasanas are entirely destroyed? Maharshi, there are two kinds of vasanas. Bandha hetuha, causing bondage for the ignorant, and two, bhoga hetuha, giving enjoyment for the wise. The latter do not obstruct realization. Devotee, are the self-realized persons reborn? For example, Vamdeva, Jadbharta, etc. Maharshi, the realized ones cannot be reborn. Rebirth is due to vasanas, which are binding, but they are destroyed in the state of self-realization. Devotee, are we to take it that they had gone to the stage of Kevala Nirvikalpa but not to Sahaja Nirvikalpa? Maharshi, yes. Devotee, if Only vasanas for enjoyment do not obstruct the state of realization, and if one can look upon the events of the world without his stage of bliss being disturbed, it means that attachment alone is bondage. Am I right? Maharishi. Yes, quite. Attachment is bondage. Attachment disappears with the elimination of the ego. Devotee. Realization is said to be helped by Guru's grace. Maharishi. Guru is none other than the Self. Talk 320. In the course of an informal conversation, Sri Bhagwan pointed out that self-realization is possible only for the fit. The vasanas must be eliminated before jnana dawns. One must be like Janaka for jnana to dawn. One must be ready to sacrifice everything for the truth. Complete renunciation is the index of fitness. Talk 326. Here is another illustration. Suppose a cow plays a rogue and strays into the neighbor's fields to graze. She is not easily weaned from her stealthy habit. Think how she can be kept in the stall. If forcibly tethered in the stall, she simply bids her time to play the rogue. If she is tempted with fine grass in the stall, she takes one mouthful on the first day and again waits for the opportunity to run away. The next day she takes two mouthfuls, so she takes more and more on each succeeding day, until finally she is weaned from her wicked tendencies. When entirely free from bad habits, she might be safely left free and she would not stray into neighbor's pasture land. Even when beaten in the stall, she does not afterward leave the place. Similarly, with the mind, it is accustomed to stray outward by the force of latent vasanas, manifesting as thoughts. So long as there are vasanas contained within, they must come out and exhaust themselves. The thoughts comprise the mind. Searching what the mind is, the thoughts will recoil and the seeker will know that they arise from the self. It is the aggregate of these thoughts that we call mind. If one realizes that the thoughts arise from the self and abide in their source, the mind will disappear. After the mind ceases to exist and bliss of peace has been realized, one will find it them as difficult to bring out a thought, as he now finds it difficult to keep out all thoughts. Here the mind is the cow playing the rogue. The thoughts are the neighbor's pasture. One's own primal being free from thoughts in the stall. Talk 332. Those familiar with logic, Virti Prabhakara, Vichara Sagra or Sutra Bhasha or similar large works cannot relish small works like Truth Revealed, dealing with only with the self and that pointedly too, because they have accumulated vasanas. Only those whose minds are less muddy or are pure can relish small and purposeful works. Talk 383. Devotee, is there no Dehatma Buddhi, I am the body idea for the Jnani? If, for instance, Sri Bhagwan be beaten by an insect, is there no sensation? Maharshi. There is the sensation and there is also the Dehatma Buddhi. The latter is common to both the Jnani and Ajnani with this difference that the Ajnani thinks Dehiva Atma, only the body is myself, whereas the Jnani knows all is of the self. Atmayam Sarvam or Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. All this is Brahma. If there be pain, let it be. It is also part of the self. The self is Purna, perfect. Now, with regard to the actions of the Jnani, they are only so called because they are ineffective. Generally, the actions get embedded as sanskaras in the individual. That can be only so long as the mind is fertile, as in the case of Agyani. With a Jnani, the mind is surmised, inferred. He has already transcended the mind. Because of his apparent activity, the mind has to be inferred in his case, and that mind is not fertile like that of an Agyani. Hence, it is said that a Jnani's mind is Brahma. Brahma is certainly no other than the Jnani's mind. The vasanas cannot beat fruit in that soil. His mind is barren, free from vasanas, etc. However, since Prarabdha was conceded in his case, vasanas also must be supposed to exist. If they exist, they are only for enjoyment. Bhoga hetu. That is to say, actions bear twofold fruits, the one for enjoyment of their fruits and the other leaving an impression on the mind in the form of sanskaras for subsequent manifestation of future births. The Jnani's mind, being barren, cannot entertain seeds of karma. His vasanas simply exhaust themselves by activities ending in enjoyment. Only bhoga hetu karma. In fact, his karma is seen only from the Ajnani's standpoint. He remains actionless, only he is not aware of the body as being apart from the self. How can there be liberation, mukti, or bondage, bandha for him? He is beyond both. He is not bound by karma either now or ever. There is no Jivan Mukta or Videha Mukta according to him. Devotee. From all this, it looks as if a Jnani who has scorched all the vasanas is the best, and that he would remain inactive like a stalk or stone. Mercy, no, not necessarily. Vasanas do not affect him. Is it not itself a vasana that one remains like a stalk or stone? Sahaja is the state. Talk number 384. The conversation turned on vasanas. Sri Bhagwan said that good tendencies and bad one, suvasana and kuvasana are concomitant. The one cannot exist without the other. Maybe that the one class predominates, good tendencies, suvasana are cultivated and they must also be finally destroyed by jnana. A young parody A young prodigy was mentioned. Sri Bhagwan remarked that latent impressions of previous births, Purva Janma Sanskara, were strong in him. Devotee, how does it manifest as the ability to sight well-known scents? Is it vasana in the form of a seed only? Maharshi, yes. Predisposition, sanskara, is acquired knowledge and kept in stock. It manifests under favorable circumstances. One with strong sanskara understands the thing when presented to him much quicker than another with no sanskara or weak sanskara. Devotee, does it hold good with inventors also? Mercy, there is nothing new under the sun. What we call invention or discoveries are merely rediscoveries by competent men with strong sanskaras in the directions under consideration. Devotee, is it so with the Newton, Einstein, etc.? Yes, certainly. But the sanskaras, however strong, will not manifest unless in a calm and still mind. It is within the experience of everyone that his attempts to rake up his memory fail, whereas something flashes in the mind when he is calm and quiet. Mental quiet is necessary even for remembrance of forgotten things. The so-called genius is one who worked hand in his past births and acquired knowledge and kept it in store as sanskaras. He now concentrates his mind until it merges in the subject. In that stillness, the submerged ideas flash out that requires favorable conditions also. Talk 385. Mr. Venkatarao, an Andhra gentleman in the course of conversation with Sri Bhagwan was told, until you gain jnana, you cannot understand the state of a jnani. There is no use asking about the work of Isvara and the rest. Some ask why Shiva went naked in Daruka forest and spoiled the chastity of the rishis' wives. The Puranas which record this incident have also said that Shiva had previously saved the Devas and the universe by consuming the poison hala hala at the time of churning of ocean of milk. He who could save the world from the deadly poison and lead the sages to emancipation had also wandered nude among us, their women. Their actions are incomprehensible to ordinary intellect. One must be jnani to understand a jnani or Isvara. Devotee, should we not learn the jnani's ways and imitate them? Maharshi, it is no use. Vasanas are of four kinds. Number one, pure, Shuddha. Number two, impure, Malina. Number three, mixed, Madhya. Number four, good. According as the Jnanis are the supreme, Virishta, the best, Varya, better, Vara, and good with. Their fruits are reaped in three ways. Number one, of our own will, Svecha. Number two, by others' will, Paricha. And number three, involuntarily, Anicca. These have been Gyanis like Gautama, Vyasa, Sukha, and Janaka. Devotee, was Vyasa also a Gyani, Maharshi? Yes, certainly. Talk number 42, 402. While speaking, while speaking of the brain and the heart, Sri Bhagwan recalled an incident of old days as follows. Kavya Ganpati Muni once argued that the brain was the most important center, and Sri Bhagwan maintained that the heart was even more so. There were others watching the discourse. A few days, a few days after Sri Bhagwan received a letter containing a short poem in English on the discourse from a young boy, N.S. Arunachalam, who had not yet matriculated. That poem is remarkable for its poetic imagination. Sri Bhagwan, Kavya Kantha, and the assemblies of other persons are represented as the heart, the brain, and the body, respectively, and again as the sun, the moon, and earth also. The light from the sun is reflected on the moon, and the earth is illuminated. Similarly, the brain acts by consciousness derived from the heart, and the body is thus projected. This teaching of Sri Bhagwan is found in Ramana Gita also. The heart is the most important center from which vitality and light radiate to the brain, thus enabling it to function. The vasanas are enclosed in the heart in their subtlest form, later flowing to the brain, which reflects them highly magnified, corresponding to a cinema show at every stage. That is how the world is said to be nothing more than a cinema show. Sri Bhagwan also added, were the vasanas in the brain instead of in the heart, they must be extinguished if the head is cut off so that reincarnations will be at an end, but it is not so. The self obviously safeguards the vasanas in its closest proximity, that is, within itself in the heart. Just as a miser keeps his most valued possessions, treasure, with himself and never out of contact. Hence, the place where the vasanas are is the self, that is the heart, and not the brain, which is only the theatre for the play of vasanas from the greenhouse of the heart. Talk number 431. A Telugu gentleman stood up and asked, the mind is said to be pure when all its vasanas are wiped out. It is also the finality when there is something to be gained as it is non duality. Maharshi, let the mind be first made pure. If the same question arises thereafter, the answer may be then be sought. Talk 439. Dr. Rama asks, Brahma being pure, how can Maya arise from him and veil him also? Vasishta replies, in pure mind associated with strong dispassion, this question will not arise. Of course, in Advaita, non-dualistic philosophy, there can be no place for Jiva, Isvara and Maya. One self sinking into the self. The vasanas, tendencies will entirely disappear, leaving no room for such a question. Mercy, the answers will be according to the capacity of the seeker. It is said in the second chapter of Gita that no one is born or dies. But in the fourth chapter, Sri Krishna says that numerous incarnations of his and of Arjuna had taken place, known to him but not to Arjuna. Which of these statements is true? Both statements are true, but from different standpoints. Now, a question is raised, how can Jiva rise up from the self? I must answer, only know your real being, then you will not raise this question. Why should a man consider himself separate? How was he before being born, or how will be after death? Why waste time in such discussions? What was your form in deep sleep? Why do you consider yourself as an individual? Devotee, my form remains subtle in deep sleep. Mercy, as is the effect, so is the cause. As is the tree, so is its seed. The whole tree is contained in the seed, which later manifests as the tree. The expanded tree must have a substratum which we call Maya. As a matter of truth, there is neither seed nor tree. There is only being. Devotee. Vasanaksaya, total end of all predispositions. Manonasa, annihilation of mind. Atma Sakshatkara, realization of the self. They seem to be interdependent. Mercy, the different expressions have only one meaning. They differ according to the individual's stage of progress. Dispassion, realization all mean the same thing. Also, they say practice and dispassion. Why practice? Because the modes of mind once subside and then rise up again, subside and rise up, and so on. Devotee. Beginningless predisposition makes one do wrong without jnana. This predisposition cannot vanish. But jnana looks almost impossible. Expiation alone cannot undo all the karma, for how much expiation will be needed. Look where we will, everything looks difficult, even impossible. Association with the wise seem to be the only cure of all this, all ills. Mercy, what is to be done? Reality is one only. How can it be realized? Realization is thus an illusion. Practice seems to be necessary. Who is to practice? Looking for the doer, the act and the accessories disappear. Moreover, if realization is not present here and now, how can it newly got be of any use? What is permanent must be eternally present. Can it be newly got and be permanent also? Realize what is present here and now. The sages did so before and still do that only. Hence, they say that it looks as if newly got. Once veiled by ignorance and later revealed, reality looks as if newly realized, but it is not new. Talk 442. While explaining a stanza of his own, Sri Bhagwan observed, the sun illumines the universe, whereas the sun of Arunachala is so dazzling that the universe is obscured and an unbroken brilliance remains. But it is not realized in the present state and can be realized only if the lotus of the heart blossom. The ordinary lotus blossoms in the light of the visible sun, whereas the subtle heart blossoms only before the sun of suns. May Arunachala make my heart blossom so that his unbroken brilliance may shine all along. Further on, Sri Bhagwan continued, the mirror reflects objects, yet they are not real because they cannot remain apart from the mirror. Similarly, the world is said to be a reflection in the mind as it does not remain in the absence of mind. The question arises if the universe is as a reflection, there must be a real object known as the universe in order that it might be reflected in the mind. This amounts to an admission of the existence of an object universe. Truly speaking, it is not so. Therefore, the dream illustration is set forth. The dream world has no objective existence. How then it is created? Some mental impressions should be admitted. They are called vasanas. How were the vasanas in the mind? The answer is they were subtle, just as a whole tree is contained potentially in a seed, so the world is in the mind. Then it is asked, a seed is the product of the tree which must have existed once in order that it may be reproduced. So the world also must have been there sometime. The answer is no. There must have been several incarnations to gather the impressions which are re-manifested in the present form. I must have existed before as I do now. The straight way to find an answer will be to see if the world is there, admitting to the existence of the world. I must admit a seer who is no other than myself. Let me find myself so that I may know the relation between the world and the seer. When I seek the self and abide as the self, there is no world to be seen. What is the reality then? The seer only and certainly not the world. Such being the truth, the man continues to argue on the basis of the reality of the world whoever asked him to accept a belief for the world. Yoga Vasishta clearly defines liberation as the abandonment of the false and remaining as being. Talk number 449. From a story being related by Sri Bhagwan, the bodily functions may be forcibly controlled and the mind may be reveling in righteous thoughts. One cannot control one's vasanas as easily as the physical frame. Talk 491. Devotee. Is it not individuality anadi without beginning? Maharshi, investigate and see if there is any individuality at all. Ask this question after solving this problem. Namalwar says, in ignorance I took the ego to be myself. However, with right knowledge, the ego is nowhere and only you remain as the self. Both monists and dualists are agreed on the necessity of self-realization. Let us do it first and then discuss the side issues. Advaita or Dvaita cannot be decided on theoretical considerations alone. If the self is realized, the question will not arise at all. Even Sukha had no confidence in his brahmacharya, whereas Sri Krishna was sure of his brahmacharya. Self-realization is designated by so many different names, Satya, Brahmacharya, etc. What is natural to the state of self-realization from the disciplinary course in the other state? I am the body. Idea will become extinct only on self-realization. With its extinction, the vasanas become extinct and all virtues will remain ever. Devotee, sanskaras are said to persist even in a jnani, Maharshi. Yes, they are bhoga hetu, leading to enjoyment only and not bandhu hetu. Devotee, this fact is often abused by fakes who pretend to be sadhus but lead vicious lives. They say it is prarabdha, remnant of past karma. How shall we mark off the fakes from the genuine sadhus? Mercy. The one who has given up the idea of being the doer cannot repeat. This is my prarabdha. The Gyanis lead different lives, is said for the benefit of others. The Gyanis cannot make use of this in explanation of their lives and conduct. Talk number 515. Devotee. In the explanation of given yesterday, it is said that the removal of avarna results in the annihilation of the karna srira. That is clear. But how is the gross body considered to fall off too? Mercy. The vasanas are of two kinds. Bandha hetu causing bondage and bhoga hetu only giving enjoyment. The Jnani has transcended the ego and therefore all the causes of bondage are inoperative. Bandha hetu is thus at an end and prarabdha past karma remains as bhoga vasanas to give enjoyment only. Therefore it was said that the Sukshma Srira alone survives jnana. Kavalya says that Sanchita karma, stored karma is at an end simultaneously with the rise of jnana. That agami karma now collecting is no longer operative owing to the absence of the sense of bondage and that prarabdha will be exhausted by enjoyment bhoga only. Thus the last one will end in course of time and then the gross body also falls away with it. Sarira Traya, the three bodies, and Karma Traya, the three karmas are mere phrases meant for the delectation of debates. A jnani is not affected by any of them. An aspirant is instructed to find who he is. If he does so, he will take no interest in discussing such matters as the above. Find the self and rest in peace. Talk 562. There is a statement in the book, Vichara Sangraha, that though a person realizes the self once, he cannot for that simple reason alone become a mukta. He continues to remain a victim of vasanas, latencies. Sri Bhagwan was asked whether the realization referred to was the same as the jnanis and if so, why there should be a difference in their effects. Mercy, the experience is the same. Every person experiences the self consciously or unconsciously. The Ajnani's experience is clouded by his latencies, whereas the Jnani is not so. The Jnani's experience of the self is therefore distinct and permanent. A, a practitioner may be long practice. A practitioner may, by long practice, gain a glimpse of the reality. The experience may be vivid for the time being, and yet he will be distracted by the old vasanas, and so his experience will not avail him. Such a man must continue his manana and nididhyasana so that all the obstacles may be destroyed. He will then be able to remain permanently in the real state. Talk number 569. A mirror, as we know it, is an insentient object which reflects light. What corresponds to a mirror is an individual. The light of the self-luminous self is reflected on the Mahatattva. The reflected light is the mind ether or the pure mind. This illumines the vasanas, latencies of the individual and hence the sense of I and this arises. Talk number 586. Devotee, is there any particular upasana method meditation which is more efficacious than others? Or Maharshi, all upasanas are equally efficacious, but each one takes easily to one kind of upasana which suit his previous vasanas. Talk number 616 is the Jivanadi an entity or a figment of the imagination? Maharshi, the yogis say that there is a nadi called the Jivanadi, Atmanadi or Paranadi. The Upanishads speak of a center from which thousands of nadis branch of some locate such a center in the brain and others in other centers. The Garbhopanishad traces the formation of the fetus and the growth of the child in the womb. The jiva is considered to enter the child through the fontanelle in the seventh month of its growth. In evidence thereof, it is pointed out that the fontanelle is tender in a baby and is also seen to pulsate. It takes some months for it to ossify. Thus, the jiva comes from above, enters through the fontanelle, and works through the thousands of the nadis which are spread over the whole body. Therefore, the seeker of truth must concentrate on the Sahasrara, that is the brain in order to regain his source. Pranayama is said to help the yogi to rouse the Kundalini Shakti which lies coiled in the solar plexus. The Shakti rises through a nerve called the Susumana, which is embedded in the core of the spinal cord and extends to the brain. If one concentrates on the Sahasrara, there is no doubt that the ecstasy of samadhi ensues. The vasanas, that is, the latencies, are not, however, destroyed. The yogi is therefore bound to wake up from the samadhi because release from bodies has not yet been accomplished. He must still try to eradicate the vasanas in order that the latencies yet inherent in him may not disturb the peace of his samadhi. So he passes down from the sahasrara to the heart through what is called the jimnadi, which is only a continuation of the susumna. The Sushumna is thus a curve. It starts from the solar plexus, rises through the spinal cord to the brain, and from there bends down and ends in the heart. When the yogi has reached the heart, the samadhi becomes permanent. Thus, we see that the heart is the final center. Some Upanishads also speak of 101 nadis which spread from the heart, one of them being the vital nadi. If the jiva comes down from above and gets reflected in the brain, as the yogis say, there must be a reflecting surface in action that must also be capable of limiting the infinite consciousness to the limits of the body. In short, the universal being becomes limited as a jiva. Such reflecting medium furnished by the aggregate of the vasanas of the individual. It acts like the water in a pot which reflects the image of an object. If the pot be drained of its water, there will be no reflection. The object will remain without being reflected. The object here is the universal being consciousness which is all pervading and therefore immanent in all. It need not be cognized by reflection alone. It is self-resplendent. Therefore, the seeker's aim must be to drain away the vasanas from the heart and let no reflection obstruct the light of eternal consciousness. This is achieved by the search for the origin of the ego and by diving into the heart. This is the direct method for self-realization. One who adopts it need not worry about nadis and brain and the susmana, the pranadi, the kundalini, pranayama or the six centers. The self does not come from anywhere else and enter the body through the crown of the head. It is as it is, ever sparkling, ever steady, unmoving, and unchanging. The changes which are noticed are not inherent in the self, which abides in the heart and is self luminous like the sun. Changes are seen in the light. The relation between the self and the body or the mind may be compared to that of a clear crystal and its background. If the crystal is placed against a red flower, it shines red. If placed against a green leaf, it shines green, and so on. The individual confines himself to the limits of the chargeful body or of the mind which derives its existence from the unchanging self. All that is necessary is to give up this mistaken identity, and that does the ever shining self will be seen to be the singing non dual reality. The reflection of consciousness is said to be in the subtle body, Suksham Sarira, which appears to be composed of the brain and the nerves radiating from it to all parts of the trunk, chiefly through the spinal column and the solar plexus. When I was on the hill, Nana Kavantha Ganpati Muni once argued that the brain was the seat of the vasanas because it consisted of innumerable cells in which the vasanas were contained and illuminated by the light of the self, which projected from the heart. Only this set a person working or thinking. But I said, how can it be so? The vasanas must be with one's self and can never remain away from the self. If, as you say, the vasanas be contained in the brain and the heart is the seat of the self, a person who is decapitated must be rid of his vasanas and should not be reborn. You agree that it is absurd. Now, can you say that the self is in the brain with the vasanas? If so, why should the head bend down when one falls asleep? Moreover, a person does not touch his head and say, I, therefore it follows that the self is in the heart and the vasanas are also there in an exceeding subtle form. When the vasanas are so projected from the heart, they are associated with the light of the self and the person is said to think. The vasanas, which lie embedded in an atomic condition, grows in size in their passage from the heart to the brain. The brain is the screen on which the images of the vasanas are thrown, and it is also the place of their functional distribution. The brain is the seat of the mind, and the mind works through it. So then this is what happens when a vasana is released and it comes into play. It is associated with the light of the self. It passes from the heart to the brain, and on its way it grows more and more until it holds the field all alone, and all the vasanas are thus kept in abeyance for the time being. When the thought is reflected in the brain, it appears as an image on a screen. The person is then said to have a clear perception of things. He is a great thinker or discoverer. Neither the thought that is extolled as being original, nor the thing, nor the country which is claimed to be a new discovery is really original or new. It could not manifest unless it was already in the mind. It was, of course, very subtle and remained imperceptible because it lay repressed by the more urgent or insistent thoughts or vasanas. When they have spent themselves, this thought arises, and by concentration, the light of the self makes it clear so that it appears magnificent, original, and revolutionary. In fact, it was only within all along. The concentration is called Samyana, Samyamana. In the Yoga Shastras, one's desires can be fulfilled by this process and it is said to be a siddhi. It is how the so-called new discoveries are made. Even worlds can be created in this manner. Samyamana leads to all siddhis, but they do not manifest so long as the ego lasts. Concentration, according to yoga, ends in the destruction of the experiencer, ego, experience and the world, and then the kondam, kondam former. Desires get fulfilled in due course. This concentration bestows on individuals even the powers of creating new worlds. It is illustrated in the Andava Upakhyana, in the Yoga Vasishta, and in the Ganda Sela Loka in the Tripura Rahasya. Although the powers appear to be wonderful to those who do not possess them, yet they are only transient. It is useless to aspire for that which is transient. All these wonders are contained in the one changeless self. The world is thus within and not without. This meaning is contained in verse 11 and 12, chapter 5 of Sri Ramana Gita. The entire universe is condensed in the body and the entire body in the heart. Thus, the heart is the nucleus of the whole universe. Therefore, Samayamana relates to concentration on different parts of the body for the different siddhis. Also, the Vishwa or the Virat is said to contain the cosmos within the limits of the body. Again, the world is not other than the mind. The mind is not other than the heart. That is the whole truth. So the heart comprises all. This is what is taught to Ketu by the illustration of the seed of a fig tree. The source is a point without any dimensions. It expands as the cosmos on the other hand and as infinite bliss on the other. That point is the pivot. From it a single vasana starts, multiplies as the experiencer I experiences and the world. The experiencer and the source are referred to in the mantra. Two birds exactly alike arise simultaneously. When I was staying in the Sakanda Ashramam, I sometimes used to go out and sit on a rock. On one such occasion, there were two or three others with me, including Ranga Swami Iyengar. Suddenly, we noticed some small moth-like insect shooting up like a rocket into the air from a crevice in the rock. Within the twinkling of an eye, it had multiplied itself into millions of moths, which formed a cloud and hid the sky from view. We wondered at it and examined the place from which it shot up. We found that it was only a pinhole and knew that so many insects could not have issued from it in such a short time. That is how Ahankara, ego, shoots up like a rocket and instantaneously spreads out as the universe. The heart is therefore the center. A person can never be away from it. If he is already dead. Although the Upanishads say that the jiva functions through other centers on different occasions, yet he does not relinquish the heart. Centers are simply places of business. Wide Vedanta Chudamani. The self is bound to the heart like a cow tethered to a peg. The movements are controlled by the length of the rope. All its wanderings center around the peg. A caterpillar crawls on a blade of grass, and when it has come to the end, it seeks another spot. While doing so, holds on with its hind legs to the blade of grass, lifts the body and sways to and fro before it can hold another. Similarly, it is with the self. It stays in the heart and holds other centers also according to circumstances, but its activities always center around the heart. Talk number 670. There are five states for the individual. They are number one, Jagrat, two, Swapana, three, Susmana, fourth, Turiya, and fifth is Turiyatita. Of these, the Jagrat is the waking state, it is the Jiva in the Visva aspect and the Lord in the Virat aspect, abiding together in the eight petals of the heart, lotus. Function through the eyes and enjoy novel pleasure from the various objects by means of all the senses, organs, etc. The five gross elements which are widespread, the 10 senses, the five vital ears, the four inner faculties, the 24 fundamentals, all these together form the gross body. The Jagrat state is characterized by Sattva Guna denoted by the letter A and presided over by the deity Vishnu. The Swapna is the dream state in which the Jiva in the Tejasa aspect and the Lord in the Hiranyagarbha aspect abiding together in the corolla of the heart lotus function in the neck and experience through the mind the results of the impressions collected in the waking state, all the principles, the five gross elements, the will and intellect, 17 in all together, form the subtle body of the dream, which is characterized by the Rajoguna denoted by the letter U and presided over by the deity of Brahma, so say the wise. The Susupti is the state of deep sleep in which the Jiva in the Prajna aspect and the Lord in the Isvara aspect abiding together in the stamina of the heart. A lotus experience the bliss of the Supreme by means of the subtle avidya. Nescience, nescience, just as a hen after roaming about in the day calls the chicks so to her and folds them under her wings and goes to rest for the night. So also the subtle individual being after finishing the experiences of the Jagrat and Swapna for the time being enters with the impressions gathered during those states into the causal body which is made up of a nescience characterized by tamoguna denoted by the letter M and presided over by the deity Rudra. Deep sleep is nothing but the experience of pure being. The three states go by different names such as the three regions, the three folds, the three deities, etc. The being always abides in the heart as stated above. If in the Jagrat state the heart is not relinquished, the mental activities are stilled and Brahma alone is contemplated. The state is called the Turiya. Again, when the individual being merges in the Supreme, it is called the Turiyatita. The vegetable kingdom is always in Susupti. The animals have both Swapna and Susupti. The gods, celestials are always in Jagrat. Man has all the three states, but the clear-sighted yogi abides only in the Turiya and the highest yogi remains in the Turiyatita alone. The three states alternate involuntarily for the average man. The last two, Turiya and Turiyatita, are however the result of practice and form clear aids to liberation of the other three states, Jagrat, Swapna, and Susupti. Each one is exclusive of the other two and limited by the conditions of time and space. They are therefore unreal. Our very experience of the Jagrat and the Swapna states proves that The consciousness as the self underlies all the five states, remains perfect all along and witnesses all of them. But with regard to similar consciousness in the deep sleep, oh, every person is known to say, I was not aware of anything, I slept soundly and happily. Two facts emerge from the statement unawareness of anything and the happiness of sound sleep. Unless these existed and were experienced in sleep, they could not find expression by the same person in the waking state. The inference also leads to the same conclusion, just as the eye sees the darkness which remains enveloping all objects, so also the self sees the darkness of the nescience which remained covering the phenomenon world. The darkness was experienced when it is the self emerged in dots of supreme bliss, shone it thrice and fleeted away in such fine subtlety as the rays of the moon which peer through the waving foliage. The experience was, however, not through any media such as the senses of the mind, but bears out the fact that consciousness does exist in deep sleep. The unawareness is owing to the absence of relative knowledge and the happiness to the absence of seething thoughts. If the experience of bliss in deep sleep is as fact, how it is that no one among all the human beings recollects it. A diver who has found the desired thing underwater cannot make his discovery known to the expectant persons on the shore until he emerges from the water. Similarly, the sleeper cannot express his experience because he cannot contract the organs of expression until he is awakened by his vasanas in due course. Therefore, it follows that the self is the light of Satta Chitta Ananda. Visva, Teja, and Prajna are the denominations of the experiencer in the waking, dream, and deep sleep states respectively. The same individual underlies all of them. They do not therefore represent the true self which is pure Sat Chitananda. The experience in deep sleep was said to be the bliss of Brahma. It is only the negative aspect of such bliss as it is the result of the absence of thoughts. Moreover, it is transitory. Such a bliss is only the abhasa, the counterfeit of supreme bliss. It is not different from the blissful feeling of sensual pleasures. In deep sleep, the prajna is said to be united with the self, so the individuality is potential in sleep. The self is the basis of all the experiences. It remains as the witness and the sport of them all. The reality is thus different from the three states the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. So I end the video here. Thank you for watching this video and listening this discourse. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe my channel. Thank you my dear friends. Next video on vasanas will start from talk number 623 and page 28. Thank you, my dear friends. Thank you.